Why not? Um, what do I post in the Discord? I can't really think of a post. Let's see. Mm, there we go. Sure. Very good, very good. Okay. Um, yeah. Watching a video that's like, why don't you try to convince psychopaths? Well, you don't try to convince psychopaths because they're a danger to themselves and others, and they want you dead, and they want everyone around them dead. So you hit them with a rock. That's how you convince them. But if you're a Democrat, you would say, well, we're all on the same team. And the psychopath would just insist they would be like, he's like, they might disagree with you and that it's not, but it's nothing important. Yeah, Democrat strategy to be like, yeah, well, we agree on the big things. And then the psychopath would just say, no, we don't. Um, Anybody who argues that psychopaths can be convinced that way by like appealing to some common ground of broader agreement, I would consider that a major red flag for anybody making that argument. You know, doing the whole "we're not so different, you and I" with a psychopath, like, why are you saying that? Why are they not so different? You know, are you also a psychopath? Which centrists and Democrats and their ideological ilk are. I don't mean left-leaning liberals at the, regular person level in this country, Your average liberal in the suburbs believes that every Republican alive is an affront to God and that FDR's will must be resuscitated from the grave to benefit all of America against the will of the people who would probably benefit most from it. Yeah, it is a self-report. Anyway, I've been trying something a little bit different with voice training, which is on other streams. I focused a lot on pitch shifting my voice up. This stream, I'm going to be focusing on just making sure that my voice is soft, a little bit softer, and I'll see how that does. Um, yeah. Truth be told, I'm quite tired, so I didn't want to stream for the full length of things today. Uh, and I think part of that has to do with, well, number one, I did not get very good sleep last night. And that has to do with something I did yesterday, which is I waxed. Here, I can even stand up and show. I waxed my legs. No more hair. My left leg, too. I think I actually did my left leg first. Ugh. Hmm. I spent the whole day doing it. Yesterday, it was Sunday, and I got groceries in the morning, and then I was kind of like struggling to figure out what to do in the afternoon because Sunday's kind of a lazy day for me. Because, ordinarily I'd be video editing, I'd be applying for jobs or like assistance programs or something, or taking care of whatever. It took you the whole day to wax your legs? Yes, it took me the whole afternoon to wax my legs. Do you know how waxing your legs works? I had to I got some um wax strips, like the wax paper and whatever. And was very careful about reading the directions. I was very careful about setting stuff up in my bathroom. Um, and what you do is you put the wax strip on your leg, in the direction that hairs are growing. So on my leg, the hairs were growing kind of down this way. So I would put it on kind of like this, try to aim for the bottom of where the hairs reached. And then you're supposed to rip it off like a band-aid. And they do mean rip it off all at once, because it won't work if you try to take it off slowly, you know? So I would do that all at once, and it hurt, but it's one of those things where you have to the quicker you do it, yeah, you do have to put in the maximum amount of effort, because the quicker you do it, the less it actually hurts. And if your brain instinctively pulls back, it hurts more. Um, it's one of the reasons that, in filmmaking, when somebody's doing a stunt with like a glass bottle or a chair or whatever, they always hit the other person with it and the chair breaks or the glass bottle breaks. And that's because if you swing hard and it breaks the thing, that actually hurts less. Because instead of you breaking, it's the bottle that breaks or the chair that breaks. If you pull your punch, it's going to hurt more and you risk somebody getting seriously hurt. Same thing. Don't pull your punches and shit like that. I don't know who this would apply to in my audience. I don't know that anybody's in like the film industry. But yeah, it took me the whole afternoon to do that. I did both legs. I don't know if you guys have seen. I have a lot of body hair densely populating my legs, all up and down, all up and down my legs, or head hair all up and down my legs, all the way down to my foot. Um, and so it was literally like I did the one wax strip kind of like on the front of my shin, and then I'd have to do wax strips all the way around and basically just do that all the way up my leg, up to my bikini line, or what they call the bikini line, you know? At which point you would start getting into like areas where it would be dangerous to use those wax strips. So you'd have to use like a special razor for trimming your bush and that sort of thing. Um, and that's why it took so long. It was my first time waxing, and I had a lot of hair. Uh, I went through 2 entire packs of wax strips doing this. But I sat down and committed to it. And I was like, I don't have anything else to do today. So I listened to some live streams. I listened to some YouTube stuff from Mr. Poltergeist. Very nice movie review YouTube channel. His voice is smooth Southern American butter in my ears. And so that's what I listened to kind of put the pain at ease as I was ripping hair off of my legs. And of course, obviously, I didn't get perfect coverage with the wax papers. So what I would do is try to get most of, like, the vast majority of the hairs in a given section, and then I'd go back with tweezers, and I'd pluck whatever hairs were left. Um, uh, uh, And after that, after I'd gotten, I think, most of the hairs with tweezers, what I would do, some of them were actually sticky enough. The wax is sticky, and that's why it works. Some of them I was able to just yank out with my hand because of, like, the wax was sticky enough to make that work. I was like, okay. And so then I would use, like, for remaining hairs, I'd use tweezers and these little post-waxing wipes to sort of moisturize my skin, make it less sticky and that sort of thing. I ended up, I like washed my feet several times on the way through. And I kind of took a shower to wash my legs as I was doing it, or like after I did it. Yeah, that's why it took me the whole afternoon, because it was waxing, but also there was a lot of plucking and a lot of wiping with these sort of soothing, moisturizing wipes and that sort of thing. And what I intend to do is go for my arms next, and then do like some electrolysis or something, you know. And that plays into why I didn't get that good of sleep last night. It was a very weird feeling having freshly waxed legs, laying down in bed. Uh, uh, it's strange how much hair serves to not just keep you warm, but keep you cool. My legs got warm and cool much quicker than ordinarily would happen if I had like full leg hair and stuff. And I started to actually realize that a lot of feminine clothing is born from the practicality of not like the practicality of working around not having as much hair. So I was like, oh, I might need some of this stuff. Like uh like leggings, exercise pants. It's been nice though. My skin feels real smooth. It's a great feeling. Um, but I kind of realized as I was going through it, the waxing and stuff, like this is probably by sheer volume, it's probably the single most painful day that I've had in my life, because several hours of it was just me putting on a wax strip, ripping it off, trying to get the remaining hairs out, trying to make sure the wax didn't stay on there forever, and then moving on to the next wax strip and doing that. And it hurt every time, but I kind of got used to it. If you've ever, as a kid, did what they call the Indian burn, where it was like a playground daredevil game, um, you'd grab somebody's arm and you do this until their skin start to burn. And I was always really good at handling that. It was kind of just like that. Hello, Kayla the Furry. Welcome back. So yeah, it was just like I was enduring the um it's like I was enduring the Indian burn on my legs for when did I start? I started at like 2:30 and I was going till about 9 in the evening. Friction sensory burns? Yeah, I was waxing for about 6.5, 7 hours yesterday. Something like that. I did take a break to eat dinner. Um, you know, but I did it. I actually waxed both of my legs. Waxed both of these. Unfortunately, I can't wax both of these nuts. That would actually be dangerous. Most the electrologists and dermatologists don't recommend doing that. But yeah, it's nice. My legs are real smooth now. And now because of that, I'm quite tired. You just need one of them soft waxes? What do you mean soft waxes? You know what you do with wax is you're pulling the hair out. I don't think there's a soft version of doing that, right? Like it's paper, there's wax on it. You put it on, you rip it off, so fast that the hairs come with it all the way down to like the root. There's kinds of wax. I've heard of like home recipes for making wax that you then like apply to your legs, like you lather up in this caramel like substance, and then you just it basically it's the same as the wax strips that you can get at the store, but takes significantly longer. There's significantly more opportunity for error. And I don't and with the amount of material that you would need to use to make that wax, I don't think it would even be more cost effective than just buying them at the store. So so that's my legs down. Then I still have to do my arms, my chest, my face, facial hair, my front, and I think some parts of my back as well. Maybe not there. Um, and then my ass and my bush. So, but the legs are a big one out of the way. Arms are going to be a little bit awkward because I'm going to have to wax my right arm, but I'm right-handed. So I'm going to have to figure out how to do that with my left hand. Imagine that as a YouTube video. I waxed my ass. Well, I didn't wax my ass yet. I don't know if you even can do that, whether it's even advisable to do that. I prefer laser. See, that's the thing. Laser is expensive. It doesn't work for people with certain types of hair and skin, which I might fall underneath as a part of. And there's also no laser hair stuff where I live. I would have to go. I would have to. I did some research into this, did some planning to this effect too, and then realized this is such a big commitment for something I don't even know if it's going to work. I'd have to go like several towns over to do that, which I don't have the resources to do at the moment. I mean, I could ride the bus, but it'd be like a 3-hour bus ride there and a 3-hour bus ride back. And all that for like a 1-hour appointment. And I'd have to go for several appointments. And at the end of it, I might not even, the hair might still come back. Different kind of lasers for weird hairs. Yeah, but I've talked to other friends about this, like trans people who have had experience with hair removal, and pretty soundly across the board, electrolysis seems to be the most permanent. Like what I figured out from waxing is that I can handle the pain. I can handle that. And if I have to spend 7 hours at home doing that, I can do that. Because it would just mean going over to the convenience store and buying those wax strips, which are not super expensive as far as like beauty products go. And doing it over and over again until the hair doesn't grow back. Again, I did some research on how permanent stuff like waxing would be, and they said like the consensus seems to be that one wax could give you like just wait, I'm not done. One wax could give you like results for up to 4 weeks, but then if you do subsequent waxes, then you could like see permanent reduction in hair growth over time. And there is electrolysis for at least for the face around where I live. I'm working on scheduling that. Yeah, it takes a long time. It hurts, which, like I said, I can handle. But the main draw is that it is permanent. So hopefully I get a good electrologist to do that. Because I hate having to shave. I hate having all this hair. Seriously. The as much as it was awkward to feel like the itchiness the first night, the smooth skin is actually so worth it. Now I'm just thinking like, oh, now I need to moisturize. So yeah, that's been my life as of late. Oops. Brilliance must moisturize. That's true. Yeah, I moisturized my hand already. I moisturized my hands already. It's not going to be that big of a deal to also moisturize my legs, especially because I moisturize at the time that you're probably supposed to, which is like right after you shower. Because like, if you take a hot shower, a warm shower, or whatever, your skin's all like dried out and such. Even though like it's obviously wet from there being water on it, but the heat dries it out, and then you put the moisturizer on. I just raw dog it. I think in some circumstances you're maybe not supposed to do that, but I don't think it actually matters. I don't think it's like a hard line or anything. Usually the circumstance in which you would want to moisturize is if there's not that much oil on your skin already. If your skin is dry to begin with. But if your skin is like fine, if there's no dry skin issue, then like you don't need to moisturize anyway. I think I've had like the most consistent results when I moisturize like right after I shower. So, one small step out of boy moding territory. That's nice, I think. Um but that's enough about me. Already used up 20 minutes of stream, which I intend to be shorter this time than last time. Okay. I wanted to talk about a couple things. Well, more than a couple things. Four or five things even, if I may be so bold. Mm, mm. Oh goodness. I'm gonna need to put on another e-patch later today as well. It's all coming together. Um, Christmas is approaching. The holiday season is here, and all of that. Uh, and here, hold on. Let me look this up. You already got patches? Goddamn. Yeah, okay, so the story behind that is that I scheduled as like one of the first things I did when I moved was I scheduled an appointment with a doctor that specializes in transgender affirming medicine. They have several trans patients, and I went to their clinic. And part of the process is, when you're discussing treatment options, consultations, and all that, is you discuss your trans experience, basically. Sus, welcome to chat. Sus, hi, welcome. Yeah, basically, I explained that like, I've known that I was at least non-binary since 2023 ish. But then yeah, the Kingdom of Sus. Uh, I explained basically at the clinic that um I had essentially realized that I was suppressing my trans femininity for quite a while, at least for a year or more, probably even for almost 10 years, because of like some of the things that I encountered when I was first exposed to being transgender as a concept. I didn't even know that people were or could transition from male to female or female to male until I was about 16. It literally, transness was not even remotely in my lexicon. It wasn't a concept that existed to me. And my uh uh that's hot, by the way. Um my first exposure to transness was very reactionary. It was the reactionary craze of 2015 and 16, with all sorts of online content. So I was instantly sort of socially polarized away from it. And then throughout college, I kind of started to resent my masculine identity. But because I had such a yes, I am. Because I had such an early negative exposure to trans identity, it sort of still didn't manifest as a positive possibility in my brain that like, sure, I hate being a depressed college-aged guy, but that's the cards I'm dealt, that I don't get to choose. Um, even though like I started to rationally realize, oh, okay, so like for some people it's different. Not really familiar with it. I was assigned male at birth by the doctor, and that's what it reads on my birth certificate. But I realized uh, concretely about, I want to say earlier this year, like 6 or 7 months ago, that I am a trans woman. So from man to woman. I'm just starting my transition. I explained all this to the clinician, to the doctor, and that like looking back on it, it's like the egg finally cracked. But I realized how much I had been suppressing and repressing, and how much gender envy I was actually experiencing of women around me. And I realized that like over time, a significant part of what I thought was like my attraction to women was also me wanting to be a woman. Um, you know, I've known already for like 7 years, and it's taking so long, I'm gonna explode. Yeah, that seems to be the general state of the medical system in Europe. But this doctor has had several trans patients, and they were very understanding. So they were like, you know what? We can just start talking about treatment options, since it sounds like you have a very good grasp of like what has been like what's going on in your brain. You communist? Yes. Not usually the first label I apply to myself. You could call me a communist, you could call me a socialist, you could call me an anarchist, you could call me a libtard if you're American. I feel like all of those would apply. Um, and so I had that appointment. No, he's a Republican, an Irish Republican, maybe. I had that appointment like about 2 weeks ago, and then a week and a half ago, I started on my uh, estradiol patch prescription, as well as a T blocker. And I did have to get, um, I had socialism in my country, and I think people who are communists don't really know communism. That's because you don't understand that what you had was not communism. Communism, philosophically, is defined as a stateless, classless, moneyless society. And I'm guessing if you had a bad experience with a state that calls itself communist, then you didn't have a stateless, classless, moneyless society. I'm guessing there was a very repressive authoritarian state ruled by a distinct ruling class that was distinct from the underclass that was ruled and didn't have any say in politics, which creates a distinct degree of class separation. And I'm guessing that there was also a great degree of poverty and potentially even income inequality, which indicates that there was money. Therefore, it is a society that has a state, class, and money. So you mean Trotskyism? I mean communism. I typically don't uh, hinge my ideological descriptors on the people that it's associated with, unless I'm specifying which particular theorist or academic I'm referring to. So I will like alternate between Marxist and Marxian, because fundamentally these are modes of analysis that describe the same ideology, or Luxemburgist, because that's, I'm influenced by uh, uh, having read Luxemburg, or Smithian, because I've read Adam Smith, or very rarely, on rare occasion, Picteist, because of Thomas Piketty. But none of these are ideologies. Yeah, but which version? I don't fucking know. There's a million different versions of communism. Queer Marxism? That's true. I am a queer Marxist. Yeah. For all intents and purposes, being a communist, I think it may be full well to ditch the label of communism. Stalinism, Maoism, etc. is shit. That is true, and I agree. Uh, uh, you know, this is why I think we should drop the label of communism entirely and just refer to the ideology we support based on the ideas uh, that that we want to bring around to make there be good outcomes for people. My viewpoint is, especially over time, increasingly outcome oriented, um, and the rational analysis of any of the contradictions of, well, capitalism leads me to say, like, yeah, we should probably do away with this and have a more democratic system. What about ANCAP? Absolute shit. Garbage tier ideology. These people just want to be able to legally discriminate against black people and gay people. Only useful thing from any of those is Mao's idea of cultural revolution. Idea, not execution. Fuck no. That I will agree with that too. And one of the only things that was socialist. There are only two things I think that are socialist and thereby pretty defensible about the Soviet Union. Number one, the workers' councils, the Soviets, which were actually destroyed in um, the early days of the Soviet Union. Lenin disbanded the workers' councils and had all the anarchists shot. Not very communist of him. Um, and then the Soviet housing program really is more social democratic than socialist, but it breaches that territory sometimes with the construction of housing cooperatives and the focus on pro-social living spaces. I think that you could say is socialist or socialist adjacent. Um, and those are the two things I find most defensible about the Soviet Union. What you say is not true. If you think, well, I don't know who that's addressed to, but I think you should read a book. I think you should look. You can call yourself a liberal. You can call yourself a social democrat. The key thing I'm hinging my analysis on is not necessarily ideological descriptors. If I can point to a spade and say it's a spade, and you will agree with me that it's a spade, that's what's important. If I say the spade is a spade and I'm a communist and my mode of analysis that also applies to broader critiques lead me to identify that spade as a spade, and you say no, it's actually not a spade, then you're retarded. You should check Mao's kill count. Yeah, I've already mentioned that. Look, Maoists and Mao are different things. Stalin and Stalinist, a little bit of a different story there, but I get down with Maoists. I do not get down with Mao. When voter or Republicans will deny the idea because it's from the Democrats. Yeah, a very famous version of this, infamous in American politics, is that the Affordable Care Act, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, the ACA, also known as Obamacare, the healthcare system, what little we have in America, is a Republican healthcare package. It was written and drafted by Republicans entirely. Mitt Romney and the neocons of the 2000s and early 2010s put that package together. And Obama, as a gesture of trying to cement a bipartisan legacy that the Republicans would be okay with, because the entire identity of the Democrats is capitulating to Republicans, adopted their plan verbatim and put his name on it. Hence Obamacare, which is why, a seemingly a thing that Democrats talk up all the time is just giving infinite money to insurance companies in what is the worst conceived price control imaginable. And Republicans want to get rid of it, not because they don't like it. In fact, Republicans came up with this. They wrote it and then instantly turned around solely because Obama's name was on it. If given the same opportunity, Republicans would do the same or worse. But it is the label that makes them hate it. They love the content of it. Giving unlimited money to insurance companies, they love that shit. It's like how a lot of communists and liberal yimbies will find some common ground on the construction of affordable housing, right? People love that shit. And everybody hates boomer NIMBYs that ruin local politics. Nobody likes them, you know? But the only way that you make political progress towards socialism, towards a better world where we're not suffering under these contradictions, where housing is treated as a commodity, et cetera, is if you don't mention every 5 minutes that you're a communist, because then the liberal will oppose everything good under the sun because we need to defeat those damn Reds. You know? I think a reporter asked Trump about healthcare and he basically told them to screw off. Yeah, that kind of shit. And of course, now what the Republicans intend to do is actually way worse. The initial proposal was to, the initial proposal like a month or two ago was to basically just do the ACA subsidies again with a Republican policy package without Obama's name on it. But now what Trump pitched that was actually dead on arrival, certifying his status as a lame duck a mere year into his presidency, was to just give Americans a $1,000 stipend to put in a health savings account, which is way more limited in scope than even the Affordable Care Act is, and would be worse. You know? And a reporter asked him about that, and he was like, it was actually the Democrats, and affordability is a Democrat hoax. You know? For the longest time, the left and the socialists were the only ones actually talking about affordability or anything. Not too long ago, the Biden administration's official line was affordability is not a problem, you're just dumb. The economy is great. And then the social democrats and the Bernie socialists and the populists on the left were saying, holy shit, everything costs way too much. My rent is killing me. The electric bills are increasing, and, wages are flat. Our healthcare system is broken beyond broken, and everybody's in debt all the time. All of which is true, is a problem that needs to be addressed, and people were feverishly trying to get some kind of ground on saying we need more affordable housing, we need Medicare for all, we need minimum wage protections, we need workers unions, we need this and this and this and this, we need a comprehensive Bill of Rights for the American worker. And Democrats and Republicans both were like, yeah, that's great. Anyways, let's kick more immigrants out of the country. You literally said, just accept that you're poor. Yeah, great thing for the American president to say to the news media. Yeah, you're just poor. Don't worry about it. Nothing you can do about that. Nothing we're going to do to help you, obviously. In a sane world, he would get blown the fuck up for that in the press. But America has almost like uniquely captured press outlets comparable, I think, to Russia and Russian state media. That's the closest analog I could probably draw here. Even Israeli media is less captured by the interests that govern Israel than American media. I think Russia truly is the closest analog. So, none of them even talked about it. And it was like nothing, just an offhand remark that went into the cloud of discourse and remained there forever, never to be spoken of. Although that's also partly because Trump is crashing out nonstop. So there's like a lot to talk about there. Anyways, I got sidetracked by Sus Among Us, the best name I've ever seen. Possibly, quite possibly. What I wanted to talk about was germane to it being the holiday season. Which is, here, let me see. Yeah, here we go. Wait, what is this? Okay, let's just go to Culture Crave, one of these big, like, pop culture sort of media Twitter accounts. Where is the... There we go. The AI-generated McDonald's Christmas ad is no longer available to watch on YouTube following backlash. McDonald's put out an AI generated, completely AI generated advertisement about, well, McDonald's around Christmas time, a Christmas themed ad. And everybody hated it. Even like a lot of the pro AI people were really quiet about it. Like nobody was defending this, and it was apparently a Dutch firm that like wrote the prompt or whatever for this like ad or whatever. They did this, and then a McDonald's ran it in I think a couple different countries. Only I would think of something so demonic. Yeah, and the reason I want to talk about this is that ordinarily I'm not the biggest fan of Christmas, because not my immediate family, my extended family can be a little bit bonkers at times. My immediate family is great. Parents, grandparents, they're awesome. My sister, she's awesome. My cat, she's awesome too. But you know, it's a very small, socially contained kind of occasion for me. And I'm not the biggest fan of that. It's kind of a small holiday in scope. I see the hat's off to you. I'll go grab a hat in a second. Um, but McDonald's was like, yeah, fuck spending time with friends and family. You should come to McDonald's. And they made like an AI generated ad about like, don't you just fucking hate Christmas time and holiday cheer and shit and like cooking and baking and spending time with friends and family, um and all that? You should come to McDonald's and eat McDonald's instead of celebrating Christmas, because this would be, it was literally like, come into our corporate restaurant instead of spending Christmas with your family. And I was like, okay, even not being the biggest fan of Christmas, I'm about to become Christmas's strongest warrior in the face of that. Because fuck you, McDonald's. And they got bullied so hard for it that this AI ad is no longer on YouTube. It's not there anymore. Jesus Christ, that's loud. We can see there's a clip of it preserved for posterity on Twitter. Most terrible time of the year. Everybody's going through it. Oh no, it's windy. Uh, everybody's fighting over consumer goods. Oh, look at that traffic jam. Everybody's falling down and having a bad time. Uh, don't you just hate family? Like, I saw this image going around quite a bit. The fucking zoomed in grandma. And there's like, oh yeah, doesn't all this suck? What if instead of this, you went to McDonald's? And yes, this is Dutch. Was I think in America and the Netherlands are the two main audiences that got exposed to this shit. Shows the problem of capitalism. Actually, the solution is consuming our product. Yeah, true. Or well, like to the extent that the problem is even capitalism, it seems like what they're trying to do, because AI generation is great for like making shit up that didn't happen. All the right wingers do it all the time. But it's like, oh yeah, this occasion that's about friends and family? Fuck all that. Come consume product. That's the ad. And I don't feel like watching it because I don't want to destroy my ears. But yeah, bullying works. And it is a far cry from the narratives that would dictate that bullying is bad. Look, if somebody posts coal like this or is so unhinged and antisocial, I would argue that bullying is not only good, but it is a moral necessity because this is rot, antisocial rot. Don't hang out with friends. Don't spend time with family. Simply consume product, and you will be happier. Trust us. We made up a video about it, so you know it's true. Why do people make their videos so loud? I don't know. I think the volume was also a little bit turned up on my headphones, but it did jump scare me nonetheless. Thing with AI, there are less people to check if see if it's a good idea, so it's more unfiltered. Yeah, I think that's true. I think AI slop obviously is slop. Like these aren't real people. They didn't get actors for this. They didn't none of these locations are real. They may be based off of real locations because of like the training data or whatever, but all of this stuff is AI generated. None of this is real. Um, you know, somebody just like basically typed in the words and they were like, "Yeah, it looks good. Don't worry about it." You know? Even with commercials, there has to be more intentional direction. Uh uh, you know? Yeah, imagine it's kind of hard to imagine under normal circumstances somebody looking at this and being like, "Yeah, this will be good for our brand and will help bring in customers and also like be good for us or something." Under normal circumstances, like I said, but these aren't normal circumstances. These are the circumstances where it's like high-ranking executives and marketing people uh, uh, looking at stuff like this instead of there at any point being involvement from actors, writers, uh, uh, filmographers, cinematographers, or whatever, you know. A little bit of Schadenfreude from that, if I'm being honest. Let me grab a hat. I'll be right back. My skin's nice and smooth because I waxed. Actually feels great. We're backwards this time. Ah, yay. That's good. Looks pretty good backwards, I think. Man, the AI bubble cannot come crashing down fast enough, you know? Like it's purely, hey, don't you hate all of these social aspects of life? Consume product. I have a genuine question. Christian tend to lean more towards the right, 9 times out of 10. Baffles the left was and is marching for Palestine while appearing largely silent on other issues such as Sudan, Africa, UK, Australia, others. My mission marching or movements, not here to attack anyone, only to seek a thoughtful response. That's because you aren't looking hard enough. Plenty of people on the left have been talking about Sudan, Africa, the UK, Australia, and everywhere. People on the left are interested in, well, many different humanitarian causes. The reason you haven't been hearing about it is because you've chosen not to hear about it. The reason that Palestine is the most visible one right now is because that is what the news media chooses to focus on. So that's sort of the terms of the discourse have been preordained already. So in a weird sort of way, the left occupies a role of having to react, though not being politically reactionary, to discourse that is oftentimes started by the right or the center or like generally the corporate ownership of news media. That's why you haven't been hearing about those. Also, if you're talking about the shooting in Australia, the left has been talking about that one quite a bit. Like the one that just happened recently. And don't fucking get me started on the UK. Um, yeah. But no, the left is not silent on any of these things. You just haven't heard about it. That's a you problem. Maybe AI should crash slower so people realize how corrupt this system is. No, I disagree. I think AI needs to crash really, really hard. Australia thing was wild. Yeah, what's even more wild to me, what's the wildest thing to me is that I don't know if you saw this. Right after the shooting, Netanyahu went on live TV and said, "Yeah, this happened because you didn't support Israel hard enough and you recognized the state of Palestine." And I like everybody had basically the same reaction, which was on the left, that is. On the right, people mostly ignored it or like tried to spin it in a certain way and it didn't really stick. But everybody was like, "What the fuck are you talking about, you genocidal old coot?" You know? Unironically, Benjamin Netanyahu is infinitely more responsible for that shooting than Australia having recognized the state of Palestine. It is the truth, uh, undoubtedly so, that that shooting was motivated by Islamist extremism. But the reason for said Islamist extremism is that Israel has been working very, very hard to sow anti Semitic sentiment around the world. So part of that is on Israel. Another part of that is on the Australian government for being complicit with Israel. Many governments around the world are like this, particularly in the West, because of the associations with their military industrial complexes. It's not a coincidence that a lot of the surveillance technology and police brutality that we see in our respective countries were initially tested in Israel, or that the officers engaging in such were trained by the Israeli military. We outsource our fascism and our authoritarianism to be tested in Israel before we decide how to implement it at home, right? Um, so we're like Western governments are deeply connected with Israel. Israel has been on a lifelong mission to sow anti Semitism around the world by propagating the line that Israel equals Jews and Jews equals Israel, so that Israel can convince the world, or whoever has the power to act on this, that the only solution to anti Semitism is for Israel to exist as a Jewish ethno state. Anti Semitism is good for Israel because it provides them a justification to continue existing and oppressing their Arab minorities. Um, you know, if anything, this shooting is a hallmark of the success of Israel, and I think how the Australian government responded is a testament to that, because they didn't like invoke this broader issue that like, yeah, anti-Semitism is on the rise. We have to insist, like a lot of people talking about the Jews and anti-Semitism need to disabuse themselves of the notion that Israel equals Jews and Jews equals Israel. These are not the same thing, you know? In a simpler word, the ideology of the shooters in Australia is fundamentally the same as the ideology of Netanyahu. That is contempt for a minority or outgroup. In the case of Netanyahu and Israel, the contempt is on the part of a ethnic Jewish majority against an Arab minority, and on the part of the shooters, or Islamist extremists, um, the contempt is from their perceived in-group of faithful Muslims, Islamist extremists, towards the outgroup of Jews. Many of whom, I should mention, the easiest way to draw the parallel that all Jews are not equal to Israel is that there are quite a lot of Jews around the world that do not approve of Israel, both as a state and insofar as what it is doing and has been doing to the Palestinian people. In fact, these are some of the loudest voices in the Jewish community, are the anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian voices. Think Jewish Voices for Peace. Anyways, that was a long-winded explanation, but I wanted to touch a little bit on what happened in Australia, because I've seen similar analysis to this effect on the left. But you won't hear any news media outlets talking about that, because they're all captured by the military-industrial complex, who have a vested interest financially and ideologically in propping up Israel. And most of them are evangelical Christians. Israel is more ideologically aligned with evangelical Christians than it is with any sort of religious Judaism. Even the conservative religious Jews, like some of the ultra-Orthodox folks, particularly in New York, you see these people a lot, are of the belief that Israel should not exist because part of the identity of the Jewish people is that God sentenced the chosen people to eternal diaspora. So it is heresy to claim that this ethno-state has been granted to us by God. You know? Something like that. Basically, what I'm saying is that no, you know what? I'm not gonna even joke that. That is way too spicy. That would get me banned off of Twitch. I was gonna make a similar joke in the vein that many pro-Israeli Zionists say, and are entirely not joking, when they say that, like, oh, you hate Israel, you're a bad Jew, or something like that. But I decided against doing that. Maybe not. And I also realized that there are a lot of Jews that are observant Jews who are also pro-Israel. So, making a joke that would have gotten you banned on Twitch. Where have I heard that before? Probably this channel on other occasions. Yeah. Joking about Israel particularly. Hell, I was talking about captured media. Twitch is an example of that. You have to be kind of careful about how you talk about Israel. Otherwise, you are liable to get banned. I don't have to be as careful because I'm a smaller streamer. And by smaller, I mean very, very small. Joke is it happens a lot on Twitch. Yeah. It do be happening on twitch.tv. I try to wear my headset over my hat so I can hear the alerts. Oh, what's going on here? The next thing I wanted to talk about, I talked a little bit about that like god-awful AI ad from McDonald's and how like companies are seemingly obsessed with all this like AI slop. Storgos, thank you for the follow. Glad to have you here. I wanted to also talk about the phenomenon of slop in general. This is not going to be like a React segment. I'm going to save that sort of like reading news articles and whatnot for in a bit. One thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is I've talked about this at other points on the channel is liberal fascism. And I want to talk about this in the context of content slop. I am no stranger to the slot machine. I even have to take part in it myself if I want my YouTube channel to keep growing. You know, YouTube rewards consistent uploads. Basically, YouTube rewards people for slopification. And that's the only viable way, not vile. I mean, it is vile, but viable way to pursue YouTube as any sort of like consistent career path. But the far right is particularly prolific in their content slop. And I feel like, or rather I've been thinking, that this is a form of liberal fascism. Liberal fascism was a term, I believe, coined by a right-winger who simply wanted to say, yeah, when you do social democracy, that's fascism actually, because you're using the government to do something good. And government doing things is both fascism and communism at the same time. So the government should just never do good things, right? But I think recently it's taken on a much different meaning, which is to say a far right, ultra conservative, like very reactionary political movement that is ultimately still compatible with liberal capitalism and the free market, quote unquote free market. It gets complicated very quick, but nonetheless, liberal fascism that still adheres to some degree of the liberal aesthetic and the liberal political economy. And I think that YouTube content slop fits this model really well because core to fascism in all its forms, liberal and illiberal, is that it hates art. Really, really hates art. You'll notice this in the way that AI bros talk. When they talk about art, even when they're trying to say, oh, see, AI can help you create art, the argument they make is a fundamentally anti-art argument because they view, even in their most charitable attempt to seem like they are pro-art, they view art merely as product to be consumed, rather than a form of expression that should be engaged in on its own merits. I believe firmly that everybody either is or has it in them to be an artist in some form or another, because art is expression, and I feel like expression is an art form. And if you hone your skills in that, that is an art form, Public speaking is an art form. Drawing is an art form. Video editing is an art form. These are all different ways of expressing yourself, right? But all of them aren't creating product to be consumed necessarily. I've drawn some things. Whenever I get into like a really bad mental slump, I've taken to sketching. And I drew actually something that was influenced by a game that I played recently before having drawn that. I think this was like a year ago, where it was like, it was based on the Gmod like source engine model of the guy holding a crowbar. I drew it free-handed, which I was pretty impressed by because usually I'm not as good at drawing. And I made him like Giovanni from Pokemon, like gave him the suit jacket and the pants and the nice shoes, because there was a ROM hack of Pokemon where you play as Giovanni, and it references Half-Life, where you use the crowbar on an object. But if you use it without anything, the little text box pops up, and it says, Giovanni swung the crowbar through the air. No regrets, Mr. Freeman. And I thought that was super cute, and so I drew it. Yeah, so I love art, and fascists hate art. They hate that kind of expression that encourages the individual spirit, specifically because it is contrary to the state and the slop, the market collective, the whatever, right? And this embodies, I think, both the fascist hatred for art, this content slop on YouTube, the right-wing content mills, and liberal institutionalism. What I mean by this is that, slop, it's a homogenate. It's a like indistinguishable mass. It's like all basically the same. In the aggregate, the vast assortment of right-wing content mills do have a cultural influence on the political landscape. All of these different right-wing channels contribute to pushing people down the alt-right pipeline, or what used to be called the alt-right pipeline, now is just the far-right pipeline. Fart-right, very true, many such cases. They do be sniffing their own farts. There is literally academic literature to this effect that YouTube's recommendation algorithm prioritizes engagement and, numbers and whatever, which leads to people increasingly getting recommended right-wing content. There have been multiple trials done on this. It's been scientifically proven that this pipeline exists. And in the aggregate, it has a big impact. But they also, in a different way, they have absolutely no cultural impact at all. Because it's gray slop that's designed to plant an idea in your head, but then be forgotten afterwards. You go to any one of these right-wing slop channels, they'll all have very, very similar styles of thumbnails. They'll all have like either AI-generated images or these highly, I I want to say touched up. In French, it's retouché. I don't know exactly. Highly edited, I guess. Reaction faces. It'll be like the same few faces for each thumbnail. Um, and the content of the video will be broadly the same. That it'll just be discussed reaction kind of flop with no, or kind of slop with no deeper thought process being actually explored, right? And of course, because of this, any one of the people that have one of these content mill channels is entirely forgettable. No discernible personal or individual identity or personality beyond talking about the thing that's designed to get right-wingers really mad. Or that's designed to put people in this reactionary fervor state. You know? I think that because of those things, I think that that's like a perfect encapsulation of liberal fascism, because complete subservience to an institution is something more characteristic of neoliberalism, late stage liberalism, you know? Um, a lot, like, you think about how the Democratic Party behaves in many liberal parties. They will excise people at the slightest disagreement with the party line, often a very centrist party line. This is why the socialists constantly get shut out of power. They never seem to figure out that you need a charismatic leader, not just in a vacuum, but somebody that believes in an affirmative nation building project to lead a political movement. Because liberals, capital L liberals, politicians and, organizations and some such, in their adherence to institutionalism, categorically opposed to such projects, institutionally transformative projects. That means you would have to change the institution, which liberalism doesn't really like. Being, a status quo politically that has a sort of inclination to propagate and preserve itself. Like a cult? Kind of. In a way, they are an anti-cult because they reject personality as a concept. Like, you get a sense of this every time the news talks about Donald Trump, at least in America. Funnily enough, even in countries that still have like pretty captured media, like in Britain, I've seen them be more willing to psychoanalyze Donald Trump a little bit, at least, and incorporate elements of his personality in understanding that him as a person influences the political decisions that he makes, the way that he interacts with these institutions as the president. But liberal news media in America is so committed to institutionalism as to try to completely glaze over the fact that Trump is a person and has a very outsized personality. They are so institutionalist that they actually dogmatically put themselves in a rhetorically incoherent corner. This is a trait that I believe is shared by right-wing content mills. Not in the sense that they so openly get backed into these corners of failures of analyses, but just because they are defined by a lack of personality to begin with, and are defined by simply being a component part of an institution with no real identity to them. Yeah, Democrats are so toothless. American liberals are so toothless. Republicans have genuinely had a hard time trying to characterize them as a sufficiently scary enemy because they just roll over. So they've taken to making fun of the Democrats on occasion, which I think is a politically intelligent thing to do. But and I mean, they still characterize the Democrats and liberals as this great enemy, but they can't be the only great enemy. So yeah, they turn to places like Twitter because there are on social media, there are larger personalities that are much louder, that capture more attention, that have more cultural sway than the Democratic Party and all of the other conventional media outlets combined. That is how lacking of personality these institutions are. It's like getting mad at someone for not being mad at you. To be fair, I am also mad at the Democrats for not being mad at Republicans. Republicans are fucking this country raw plundering of its resources, and like enabling the economy to just get turned into a cesspit of gambling, constantly deregulating the largest corporations known to man so they can merge, grow, screw more people out of their fucking life savings and healthcare. And the Democrats are just like, oh no, vote for us and we'll maybe do something about how mean Trump is, regardless of all these countless laws that are being broken on a daily basis, you know? I, you know, if I were the Republicans, I would also be kind of flummoxed that the Democrats aren't mad at me, you know? Have you seen those clips where Republicans are dumbfounded by Democrats rolling over? I've seen like one or two. I think Mike Johnson was one of the individuals in question, where it like, even though he was saying certain things, the tone really indicated that he like, with the Democrats caving on the government shutdown in early November, I think the tone of the Republicans really indicated they did not think that the Democrats were just going to do that like that, you know? Despite them saying like, oh, yeah, we had faith the whole time. It, you know, you kind of read it between the lines, if that makes sense. Anyways, hate liberals, hate institutionalism, hate gray goop, hate right-wing content mills, love nation-building projects, love socialism, simple as type shit. Reality is a skid at this point. Art imitates life, imitates art. It is what it is. Now, on a similar subject to liberal institutionalism, let's talk about one particular liberal who I really wish would disappear from the institution. Here we go. Kamala Harris is running for president again. I can't deal, dude. Axios is my favorite news outlet for talking shit about the Democrats because their bias is mostly readable. Yeah, she needs to the extent that like a primary race happens, she needs to get whooped so bad that she cannot come back to politics. Like, I think that like at this point, people might hate Kamala Harris more than Hillary Clinton, and for good reason. The difference is, for whatever reason, the K Hive still exists. Like, there's still a very small fan base of like Kamala Harris people who really like her despite her complete incompetence, lack of charisma, and abject sociopathy that led her to correctly call Republicans fascist on the campaign trail, and then in like the aftermath just saying, by the way, all that stuff about how Republicans hate democracy and are fascists and whatever, I didn't believe any of that. I was lying. One of the most detestable people in politics today. Even I think Trump has enough of a personality to not be as detestable as Kamala Harris. And Trump is a pedophile. Didn't she go into a tour saying, this is all your fault? Yes, Kamala Harris did the opposite of an apology tour. She wrote a book called like 107 Days or something. Shit ass book. I have no intention to read it. She blames literally everybody else except for herself. thing she has in common, by the way, with a lot of the Democratic Party autopsies that were done after that election, they were like, yeah, so what went wrong? Ignoring all the things that went wrong. So like they specifically discounted, yeah, all the stuff that like we did wrong, and we didn't have an affirmative plan, whatever. We dropped all the effective rhetoric and alienated the left from our campaign. Yeah. Aside from that, what did we do wrong? Like they weren't interested in actually reflecting on that. Of course, Kamala Harris, one of the things that she's known for saying on this anti-apology tour was, you all should have just voted for me. No, absolutely no degree of reflection on any of the things that occurred during her campaign. Like absolute garbage human being with no respect for any of the people that work with her, work for her, or tried to get her elected. I'm qualified to say this uniquely because I was one such person. I was a volunteer on the ill-fated Kamala Harris campaign in 2024. I volunteered with a phone banking group doing tech support during the 2024 campaign. And one of my frustrations as the campaign went on, I started enthusiastic and became very much less so over time, because of like how much Kamala Harris just put a muzzle on Tim Walz, the only good thing about that campaign. I expressed at various points that like, guys, it really seems like, or I expressed at the end because I wanted to like keep a tight ship for most of it. Like, guys, it really seems like we were trying to push the Democrats across the finish line despite all of their best efforts. They wanted to lose, and we were trying to make them win against their own will. You know, you guys remember, germane to what I was saying earlier, how much Palestine is in the news, how much people talk about Palestine because there's a genocide happening over there right now, right? Obviously, people are going to talk about it. It's being live streamed in real time, children being shot, burned, blown up. You know, how could you not, you know? I remember this being talked about in 2024, particularly after the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, where they did not allow Palestinians in the building or pro-Palestinian protesters. Straight up, they did not. They barred an entire ethnic group and like political advocacy for the rights of that ethnic group from coming into the building. The Democrats knew that Palestine was a massive political liability for them insofar as they were willing to just let Israel do whatever they want, right? So what do they do about this? They could address the problem and say, look, we support a ceasefire and we will make sure Israel holds up on that. You know, put some scrutiny on Israel for once. Bare minimum, by the way. Absolute bare minimum. You know, a much more politically feasible thing would be like, yeah, the government of Israel shall know legal hell. They're all going to The Hague. There will be a one-state solution. You will have a secular society, no ifs, ands, or buts. They could have done something like that, something in that range of things. Instead, what they did was they just completely removed all mention of Palestine from anywhere people could provide feedback for them. Even though I was tech support on these phone calls, on these phone banks, we saw scripts. Like when you do phone banking in politics, it is a little bit like sales, except the greatest part is you're not asking people for money. You're asking people for votes and political support. You're trying to convince them of something rhetorically, and it really helps if it's something you believe in, right? And I started to notice, like, oh yeah, people are really concerned about Gaza and the genocide that's going on over there. And this was part of like, there were certain categories that people could say like, oh yeah, these are like my main political concerns. You know, there's an opportunity for you to ask like, hey, you know, so what do you care about? Like, what are things you care about a lot? One of those things was Gaza. Post DNC, I remember this. They removed Gaza and Palestine as an option for something that people could respond that they cared about. So like if you're on the phone bank and somebody answers that question, you click that, which provides further like information on like basically what your line could be for like, oh, well, you know, if you care about this, then, you know, this candidate supports blah, 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 right? And one of those was like Palestine and Gaza. They removed the option for you to indicate that people cared about Palestine and Gaza from their campaigning materials. Yeah, that like what the one place that like a almost market-esque decentralized method of gathering information works to tell them something critically important, they're like, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, stop talking about that, stop talking about that. And of course, meanwhile, like, this is a political layup. You had the Republicans out there saying, yeah, we should just kill them all, just let Israel do whatever they want. They're God's chosen people. The state of Israel has the right to exist as an ethno-state. Palestinians are subhuman. They should just nuke Palestine. That's what the Republicans were saying at this time, with the sole exception of nuke Palestine, because that would require them to admit that Israel has nukes. Anyways, I have crashed out on how evil this fucking woman is. Now let me get into this article that I brought up, but actually just have not read a word of yet. Sorry, I've put that off for long enough. Los Angeles. Kamala Harris isn't planning to go gentle into that good night. Except she literally did this. She said, good night, y'all, at the end of her campaign. And that was it. She did, in fact, do this. This week, the former vice president made clear to potential 2028 rivals that she's working to keep another White House campaign viable. I think she was even in talks with the Democratic Party and leadership about this, and she's already getting like some information from them, like insider information with regards to like political campaigning, which indicates that the Democratic Party intends to crush their cock and balls with a rock again, the same way they did last time. Yeah, the new special move, historical revisionism, in parentheses, derogatory, you know? Despite worries from party leaders and donors that she can't win, well-founded to the extent that they, worry about this, Harris remains at or near the top of most 2028 Democratic primary polls. The reason for this being that the Democratic Party has done no work to elevate any sort of contrary political vision or candidate to Kamala Harris since. They've like actively quashed opposition. Look how they treated Mamdani. Look how they treated Katie Wilson and Omar Fateh. These local progressive socialist populists who are clearly capturing the attention of the party base, the left wing in America. And the Democrats are actively trying to say, nope, no, don't go to those people. Don't go to those people. Come back to the same corporate centrist slop over and over again. That is all we are willing to provide you. Yeah, he had to fight against his own party. His own party supported Andrew Cuomo. And funnily enough, so did the Republicans. Curtis Sliwa was the Republican candidate. Zoran Mamdani was the Democratic candidate. Andrew Cuomo was the independent candidate. The Democratic and Republican parties both did not support their own nominees and instead supported the independent because the independent was more compatible with centrist corporate slop than either Sliwa or Mamdani. It doesn't even need to be socialism that they're joining forces against. They'll do that. They'll just join forces against anybody who wants to do something good. A lot of the stuff that Zoran Mamdani was advocating for, sure, you could say it's like potentially motivated by an objective of eventually doing some socialist things or moving towards socialism. But a lot of those are just social democracy, like basic shit, which speaks to how dire of a situation that America is in, that socialists can be considered radical populists who want to transform this country for the better, and their political platform is something that would have been considered like bog standard 100 years ago. Anyways, Harris also has strong support among black voters, the most critical voting bloc in most recent Democratic presidential primaries. Fuck you, Axios, for perpetuating this narrative that the way that you do politics is by like dividing and conquering like demographic groups. Like, oh yeah, what is she campaigning for? I don't know, but she's campaigning to these people. Not for anything, but to these people. It also dehumanizes people a lot. And I'm no stranger to saying that the American people are fucking dumb, that people are stupid, and they will do what they're told by broader media narratives, right? But I think that's actually the opposite of dehumanizing. I think that's just me recognizing very basic human traits that we all share, that I'm subject to myself. We are all influenced by the circumstances under which we live. Our views of the world are influenced by the media, the narratives, and the circumstances that we are exposed to or told about, right? Democrats literally don't recognize this. They're like, well, the black voters like her. Even though Axios is like a center-right news outlet. After lying low the first part of the year and then embarking on a 2024 focused book tour, Harris made several moves this week that made many Democrats see as the beginnings of a 2028 campaign. Her book tour expanded. Harris announced many more stops on her tour to promote 107 Days, her story of her short presidential campaign last year. Tour stops in early 2026 will include the historically critical primary state of South Carolina and cities with many black voters, including Detroit, Jackson, Mississippi, Memphis, Tennessee, and Montgomery, Alabama. So yeah, these are like all the areas that are relevant in presidential primary elections. She appeared before the Democratic National Committee. Harris and her husband, Doug Emhoff, mingled with the National Party officials and state party chairs in Los Angeles this week during the DNC's winter meeting. At a reception Wednesday evening, DNC chair Ken Martin, the guy who cried, by the way, after being bullied by his younger progressive co-chair and then resulted in said co-chair being fired. Like the younger co-chair, when I say quote unquote bullied, is the lightest fucking touch imaginable. You know, David Hogg said, yeah, we need to be okay with primarying Democrats that don't do anything and replace them with Democrats that are much more politically active and ambitious, because like otherwise the party will die. And Ken Martin fucking cried on audio. Introduced Emhoff as a former second gentleman and quipped that he could be the future first gentleman. People heard the remarks told Axios. Harris is rolling out new rhetoric. New probably being in air quotes. She railed against both parties and the status quo in a speech Friday to Democratic officials. Okay, this would actually be new for her because she's the status quo basically personified. Many in the room told Axios they were struck by how different Harris' remarks were from her Biden defending message on the campaign trail last year. I would bet money that she did not directly criticize Joe Biden in doing this. Because for whatever reason, the Democratic Party has this really, really bizarre internal legacy culture. You're not allowed to criticize Obama. You're not allowed to criticize Joe Biden. You're not allowed to criticize Hillary Clinton even. You're not allowed to criticize a lot of party insiders that have built the party in its modern state, whether that be good or bad, in parentheses, mostly bad, you know? Like shit, they probably would tolerate you breaking from FDR way more than they would tolerate you breaking from Obama. Like you could criticize things that FDR did and the Democratic Party would be more willing to stomach you than if you criticize something that Obama, Biden, or Clinton did, like Bill Clinton, or that Hillary Clinton advocated for or said or whatever, you know? Anyways, both parties have failed to hold the public's trust, Harris said. Government is viewed as fundamentally unable to meet the needs of its people. People are done with the status quo and they're ready to break things to force change. That's great. Would you care to actually say anything? Nobody like falls for this, by the way. Unless they're consultants, in which case they're like, oh, great, keep saying this exact thing and don't elaborate any further. After this speech, some committee members told Axios they want Harris to run in 2028. And that when Harris mentioned the future during her speech, someone shouted, you. Okay, 50-50 chance, K-Hive or paid? Harris spokesperson Kirsten Allen said Harris will approach 2026 with the same commitment that anchored 2025. So nothing. Listening to the American people, reflecting where leadership has fallen short, and helping shape the path forward beyond this political moment. So blaming Americans for not supporting her hard enough. Gotcha. Allen added that includes supporting efforts to win Democratic majorities in the House and Senate. Okay. I was going to say, buddy, if she wants to do that, the best thing she can do is never endorse anybody. because her endorsement would be toxic. Very, very toxic, especially given that the Democratic Party needs the help of a younger, much more left-leaning political base to remain relevant. And Kamala Harris is antithetical to that. But the Democrats are paid opposition. They are controlled opposition, rather, maybe not directly paid, but controlled opposition by the same interests that control both the Democratic and Republican parties, the interests of capital, right? And I have semi-jokingly, offered that the Democrats are going to have to work extra hard to lose the 2026 elections, because the Democrats work really hard in order to lose, This would be a component part of that. I could see a path where the Democrats lose in 2026. They make only very disappointing, moderate to mild gains. And that world includes Kamala Harris going around and endorsing everybody to ensure that people know that the Democratic Party is still the party of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and so on and so forth. Harris also spoke Thursday night at the annual gala for the United Farm Workers and received enthusiastic applause. UFW President Teresa Romero told Axios rank-and-file UFW members from towns like Bakersfield, Salinas, Oxnard, and Modesto were excited to see her and know she's still fighting for them. Sprinkling in some great, catering to rural America, too. Again, the, obsession with rural American identity when all of American culture comes from the cities for the most part. And this, the endorsement of unions here doesn't mean that much to me, because unions have been, we've seen unions go in various different sorts of directions in doing things that they believe are in the best interest of their members, but ultimately screw the whole country over even further. Like how the United Auto Workers were very positive on Trump's tariffs because of I don't know, something about outsourcing automobile manufacturing or something like that. A lot of the unions, when push comes to shove, because of their connection to business, because unions are a part of the businesses at which they work and their fate is sort of tied to that, they can go on kind of a Nosball streak sometimes. When they think of cities, they think of minorities. Yeah, that's true. You're supposed to, this is how they say, see, guys, we're catering to the white supremacists too, or something like that. Several early polls. Oh, wait, no, I'm still on this one. Okay. Other potential 2028 Democratic candidates were also in LA this week, but didn't speak at the full DNC meeting. California Governor Gavin Newsom stormed through on Thursday and met with several committee members and Martin. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker headlined a DNC fundraiser in LA that raised more than $1 million, but he didn't make the rounds of the nearby DNC meeting, surprising some party officials. I don't know what Pritzker's game is. I want to like him, but I feel like he's a little bit compromised by the institutional Democratic Party. I want to believe that he could become an FDR-esque figure, but it would take him breaking from the party more and supporting some much more robust social democratic reforms regarding things like housing and publicly owned grocery stores and commissaries and public transit and Medicare for all and things like that, But there's a vision, potentially. I wouldn't count on it, but there's a vision. Newsom is just a psycho. Several early polls have shown Newsom as a top contender for the 2028 nomination, but Morning Consult has consistently found Harris leading. Again, because the Democrats are terminally unwilling to consider that anybody else could be a good, candidate. Their surveys have also shown Harris narrowly outperforming Newsom against Vance. Yeah. Two recent polls of the traditionally important state of New Hampshire found Harris trailing Newsom and former Transport Secretary Pete Buttigieg. If they run Pete Buttigieg, if they run Harris or Newsom or Buttigieg, that is the death of the party. Yeah, it's like the Democratic Party has decided one of these people is going to be the next president, and that's final. We are not taking input or feedback from our own political base and party membership. Party membership in the United States works differently than in other countries. In other countries, you have to pay dues and have like a card to be a member of a party. In the United States, when you register to vote, you register as either Democrat, Republican, or Independent, and that affects which internal elections you get to vote in. But there's no dues. There's no local party meetings. Parties just don't have a social presence at the local level in America. So they're to begin with, they're already much more disconnected from their political base, but still just as reliant on them for political support. And the Democrats are, again, they're just ideologically unwilling to recognize that there is still a democratic logic that underpins elections in this country. That is, you have to campaign. You have to appeal to people on issues that, affect them. And that's not to say just have an epic policy platform, Lamau. No, you have to be a populist. You have to know how to sell that to people. And even when the Democrats sometimes have that, they are so willing to just cave and not sell it at all. Yeah, they think of people as sheep that they need to herd into the flock in order to maintain power. Unironically, Republicans view their voter base as much more human than the Democrats do, because the Republicans are willing to effectively the Republicans turn the racism dial and look back to their audience for approval, right? Because they recognize they need the approval for the audience for that to keep working. The Democrats are turning up the fucking neoliberal slop dial and not once looking back at the audience, and actively ignore them when they start shouting. Thank you, Axios. National polls of presidential primaries, especially more than 2 years out, make for good cocktail party debates, but not much else. Thank you. Appropriately dismissive of the Democratic Party, if I don't say so myself, at least at the end. Yeah, and then they realize that everybody hits and they're like, what's wrong with you guys? All I did was turn on the enshittification machine because Republicans asked me to. I don't know what you're so mad about. Type shit. This country's full of narcissists who don't believe anything. That our political system fucking optimizes for narcissistic dipshits that believe nothing. You really act like the noble system? Not even. In feudalism, in the feudal system, there was such a thing as noblesse oblige. This was a pretty consistent governing logic, even though there was a massive degree of exploitation and extraction that occurred, like the nobles taking their cut as rent that they did not earn, that they did not work for, from the peasantry, right? There was a sort of ideological through line of noblesse oblige, that the peasants work the land, and as a good member of the nobility, to be morally noble. There's a reason we describe intentions as noble, because of the ideology of the noblesse oblige, where it's oh yeah, we should provide protection to these peasants. We should ensure that all these settlements are getting food distributed to them in sufficient quantities if they're not farming settlements. We should make sure that they're not being crushed by these rents necessarily. That's not to say they all followed through on that, but it was sort of it was an ideological guideline that was commonly referred to, especially in justifying why the nobles were in the position that they were in, because one of their core things was yeah, part of what makes us who we are is that we're supposed to care about the fate of the peasantry, because we recognize that they constitute the working force of the country and they support us in our position. Democrats and modern liberals and modern fascists to an extent as well, because fascists nowadays are just liberals but worse, are so up their own ass that they just don't care. They'll destroy an entire country. They're literally like, and I'm not exaggerating either. There have been measles outbreaks in America. Measles, I was born in the year that measles was declared extinct. No more measles. They have measles vaccines, MMR vaccines. I got mine as a kid. Several diseases that were considered extinct when I was born and was vaccinated against them are having outbreaks today because fascists are destroying the institutions that are responsible for public health, and liberals have no interest in stopping them. There is nothing comparable to the noblesse oblige in this country, and that is not me saying that we need to bring back the feudal system and the noblesse oblige, because the feudal system was not a good system. Nobles were completely unaccountable. But what I am saying is that this system also sucks and is being crushed by the weight of its own contradictions. This is a product of the ideological individualism that is inherent to liberalism. There is such a thing as like it going too far in this instance. Like toxic individualism is definitely a thing that pervades American politics especially, but politics everywhere else too. That politicians increasingly are just transparent about not believing in anything, which includes inoculating the population of this country against diseases that killed like millions in generations prior. Yeah, and then they will literally cry about it when you say like you're doing a shit ass job and somebody should replace you because people are dying, and they'll cry and whine about poor me. You don't hate these people enough. However much you think you hate these people, however much I hate these people, we do not hate them enough. I wasn't able to keep up the voice training for that long. When I get deeper into a subject, it's harder for me to maintain a femme voice, or at least a voice that I feel like sounds femme. I kind of slip back into my regular voice, just slightly higher pitched. Which I guess that's progress, consistently having a higher pitch. Now I would just want my voice to be a little bit smoother. I'm experimenting. I'm figuring some stuff out. I know that I had like promised some gaming streams and stuff, but I don't have it in me today. I think I'm just gonna find somebody to raid. Yeah. I had something else that I had in mind maybe to talk about. But for now, here, hold on. Let me write something down. Uh-huh. 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 Um, there we go. Oh, I guess I could wind down a little bit before I end stream. Do you guys see, I don't know how many Street Fighter heads I have in my audience. I play Street Fighter sometimes. And there's gonna be an update for Street Fighter 6 dropping tomorrow, apparently, actually. I was gonna say on the 16th, but I realized today's the 15th. God, it's already halfway through December. And part of this update is it's going to enable you to make UI changes. Like the health bars look a certain way in Street Fighter 6, and every Street Fighter game, they have a distinct look to them. And one of the parts of this update that they're going to implement is they're going to let you change how the health bars and super bars look, which is great because I love the way that the health bars and super bars looked in previous Street Fighter games. Not to say they look bad in Street Fighter 6. Obviously, it's like there's a design aesthetic there, but it's not my favorite aesthetic. It's got like the slanted diagonal looking health bar. I prefer the like rectangular health bar that makes it kind of look, because it's a slightly thinner health bar makes it look like you're doing more damage per hit. So more like Street Fighter 5 or Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. Big fan of those. I don't know if they include like new generation or second impact as part of this UI, but I know they also include Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter Alpha and Street Fighter 4. So that's gonna be fun. I'm gonna try that out. And as Broski, top Street Fighter player, explained as he put on the tinfoil hat and identified an actual gameplay difference in the footage that they used to showcase this. It might also be a balance patch. Hopefully Ryu gets nerfed so I can feel socially okay with playing Ryu again. They buffed Ryu way too much in that game for gameplay purposes. It is lore accurate, but nonetheless. I don't know. I just wanted to talk about that because there are certain small things that I like about Street Fighter that vary from game to game. I've talked about Ryu's donkey kick, the Jodan Sokutogeri, which is like translates to high blade kick, but in the original it's like not as much of a blade kick because he doesn't actually kick with the blade of his foot. And then like the health bars in Third Strike just look sick. It makes you feel like you're actually hitting the other person for hella damage. Big fan of that. I'll be excited to potentially play that tomorrow. Anyways, right now what I'm gonna do is trying to look at my schedule, see what I have written down. You guys don't need to know that though. Or raid somebody. What the fuck? Jeremiah is live? I didn't know this. I'm not gonna raid anybody, I don't think. I don't know. I'll see y'all next time. I'm gonna go this week again, doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday as my streaming schedule. But I feel like that could lead me to getting kind of burned out if I stream back to back to back. I don't know. I don't know. Because I feel like once every other day is also like a bit awkward of a schedule. I'm gonna have to figure some things out. That's for sure. Yeah, I'll see you guys later.